I unlocked my mother's front door at 11:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning in late April, 2 days earlier than my sister expected me. I'd caught an earlier flight from Dubai, wanted to surprise them both for Mama's 85th birthday. The key turned easily in the lock, the same lock my father had installed back in 1968 when this Biddleville neighborhood was just starting to integrate. I smiled, imagining Mama's face when I walked through that door. But the smile died the second I stepped inside. The house was completely dark, every curtain drawn tight, blocking out the midday sun, and the smell hit me like a physical force. Urine, rot, something sour and wrong that made me gag, made my eyes water. I covered my nose with my sleeve and called out, "Mama, Francine, anyone home?" Nothing. Just silence and that terrible smell getting stronger with every step I took deeper into the house. I moved through the living room, my heart starting to pound. Mama's favorite floral chair sat empty, a thin layer of dust on the armrests. The coffee table was cluttered with unopened mail, stacks of it, weeks' worth maybe. The kitchen was worse. Dishes piled in the sink, some with mold growing on them, the trash can overflowing. This wasn't my mother's house. My mother kept a spotless home. She'd been a school teacher for 28 years. Organization and cleanliness were practically religion to her. "Mama!" I called again, my voice cracking now. "Where are you?" I walked down the hallway toward the back bedrooms, that smell getting stronger and dread building in my chest like a stone. I pushed open the door to what used to be the guest room, and that's when I found her. My mother, my vibrant, strong, beautiful mother, was lying in a hospital bed I'd paid for 6 months ago. She was wearing an adult diaper that looked days old, stained and sagging. Her body was so thin I could see every bone. Her collarbone jutted out sharp under papery skin. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. The water pitcher on the nightstand next to her was bone dry, covered in dust like it hadn't been touched in weeks. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I just stood there, frozen, staring at this skeleton that used to be my mother. Then her eyes fluttered open. She looked at me, and I wasn't even sure she recognized me. Her voice came out as barely a whisper, cracked and desperate. "Water." That single word broke me. I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands, dialed 911, and while it rang, I grabbed a water bottle from my purse and brought it to her lips. She drank like she'd been in a desert for days, water dribbling down her chin because she couldn't control her mouth properly. 911, what's your emergency? My mother, my voice broke. My mother she's dying. She's been neglected. I need an ambulance right now. I gave them the address, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone. "Please hurry, please." The operator stayed on the line with me, asking questions I could barely answer. "How long has she been like this?" "I don't know." "Who's been caring for her?" "My sister." "Where is your sister?" "I don't know." The admissions felt like knives. The paramedics arrived in 7 minutes. 2 of them, a white man in his 30s and a black woman around my age, maybe mid-40s. The woman took one look at my mother, and her face went from professional concern to barely controlled rage. She immediately pulled out her radio. "Dispatch, we need police backup at this location. This is a criminal case. Elder abuse." Criminal case. The words hung in the air. They went to work fast, checking vitals, starting an IV, moving Mama carefully onto their stretcher. Every time they touched her, she whimpered. The male paramedic looked at me, his expression grim. "Ma'am, when was the last time someone checked on your mother?" "My sister was supposed to be caring for her. I've been working overseas. I've been sending money every month, $2,000, so my sister could provide full-time care." The female paramedic stopped what she was doing and looked directly at me. "How long since you've physically been here?" 18 months. The silence that followed was damning. This kind of family betrayal happens every day. Subscribe to see how dark this gets. Where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments. What I didn't know yet, what I couldn't have imagined in my worst nightmares, was that my sister Francine hadn't been to this house in over 3 weeks. The $36,000 I'd wired to her over 18 months had paid for a brand new Lexus, a vacation to Turks and Caicos, and renovations to her boyfriend's townhouse, while I was working 12-hour days in Dubai, trusting her completely. She'd been living a lifestyle she couldn't afford, and our mother had been starving to death in this bedroom. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you didn't ask questions, didn't verify, didn't check even once? Because that's what I did. I trusted my sister with our mother's life, and I never once verified that trust was deserved. Let me back up. Let me tell you how this started, because you need to understand how a daughter who loved her mother could end up 18 months away while this happened. 18 months ago, I was offered a position I'd been working toward my entire career: senior hospital administrator at a major medical facility in Dubai. The pay was incredible, triple what I was making in Charlotte. The experience was invaluable. It was supposed to be the pinnacle of my career, the job that would set up my retirement, the opportunity of a lifetime. But I had a problem. My mother, Pearl, was 83 years old. She was still mentally sharp, could beat me at Scrabble any day of the week, but she was having mobility issues. Stairs were getting harder. She'd had a couple of small falls. Nothing serious, but concerning. I knew she needed someone checking on her regularly. I was sitting at her kitchen table, this very table where we'd had Sunday dinners for decades, trying to figure out how to turn down the Dubai position. And that's when my sister Francine made her suggestion. Francine is 4 years younger than me, 58 at the time. She'd been struggling ever since her divorce 5 years earlier. Her ex-husband had left her with debt and damaged credit. She was working part-time at a retail store, barely making $1,400 a month. She was living in a studio apartment she could barely afford, and I could see the stress wearing on her. "Let me do this, B," she said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "Let me take care of Mama. You take that position in Dubai. You've earned it. You send me $2,000 a month and I'll quit that dead-end retail job and move in here full-time. I'll make sure Mama eats right, takes her medications, gets to her doctor appointments. You won't have to worry, and I'll finally be able to contribute something meaningful to this family." She had tears in her eyes when she said it. Real tears. "You're giving me a chance to make things right with Mama. Please let me do this." I felt a wave of relief so powerful, it almost made me cry too. It was perfect. Mama would be cared for by family, not some stranger. Francine would have financial stability for the first time in years, and I could take the position without the crushing guilt of abandoning my mother. Everyone won, so I said yes. I flew to Dubai in October, and for the first 2 months, everything was perfect. We did video calls twice a week, FaceTime every Tuesday and Friday evening, Dubai time. Mama looked healthy, happy even. The house was always clean. Francine would show me the meals she'd prepared: baked chicken, collard greens, mac and cheese, all of Mama's favorites. She'd organized all of Mama's medications in those weekly pill containers. She'd even planted flowers in the front garden. "Your sister is taking such good care of me, baby," Mama would tell me, her face filling the phone screen. "Don't you worry about a thing. You focus on that important job." But around month 3, the calls started getting harder to schedule. Francine would text, "Can we move Tuesday to Wednesday? Mama has a doctor's appointment." Or, "Tonight's not good. Mama's napping and I don't want to wake her." I understood. Caregiving isn't a 9-to-5 job. You work around the care recipient's needs and schedule. The calls got shorter too. What used to be 30-minute conversations became 10, then 5. And Francine started looking different. She got her hair done in an expensive-looking layered cut. She was wearing designer glasses. I recognized the brand because I'd priced them once and couldn't justify the cost. Her nails were always freshly manicured. I noticed, but I rationalized it. The $2,000 a month wasn't just for Mama's direct care. Francine needed to take care of herself, too. A stressed, burned-out caregiver wouldn't be good for anyone. If she was spending some of the money on self-care, that was healthy. That was smart. By month 6, we'd transitioned almost entirely to text communication. I'd send a text, "How's Mama doing?" Francine would reply, "Good. Took her to church Sunday. Everything's fine." Photos would arrive occasionally. Mama sitting in her floral armchair wearing her cream-colored robe, always shot from the same angle. I'm sitting in that ambulance right now, reviewing those photos on my phone while the paramedics work on my mother, and I'm noticing something I should have seen months ago. It's the same photo. Not literally the same photo, but the same setup. Same chair, same robe, same angle, same lighting. Like Francine took 50 photos in one sitting and had been sending me one every few weeks to make it look like she was there regularly. You're probably thinking I should have known something was wrong. You're right. I should have. The truth is, I was busy. Dubai was consuming. The hospital expansion project I was leading involved coordinating between 5 different construction firms, managing a staff of 200, navigating cultural differences and language barriers I'd never dealt with before. I was working 12-hour days, sometimes 6 days a week, and if I'm being completely honest with myself, I was relieved not to have to think about Mama constantly. Francine was handling it. That's what I told myself every time I wired another $2,000 to her account, every month for 18 months. $36,000 total, plus another $3,200 for the hospital bed when Francine said Mama needed one. Plus $890 for bathroom safety equipment, plus $1,500 for a medical alert system Francine claimed to have installed, plus $5,000 in month 11 when Francine texted about unexpected medical costs, prescriptions that weren't covered by insurance, $44,700. I never asked for a single receipt. The ambulance pulls into the emergency bay at Carolina's Medical Center. They rush my mother inside, and I'm left standing in the hallway filling out paperwork I can barely see through my tears. Name, date of birth, insurance information, medical history, questions I should know the answers to but don't because I haven't been here. They take Mama straight to the ICU. A nurse, a white woman in her 50s with kind eyes, tells me it'll be a while before I can see her. They need to stabilize her first. She gestures to a waiting area. "There's coffee if you want it. This might take some time." I don't want coffee. I want to rewind 18 months. I want to say no to Dubai. I want to be the one caring for my mother instead of trusting a sister who clearly didn't deserve that trust. An hour passes, then 2. I try calling Francine, straight to voicemail. I try again, same thing. I send a text, "I'm at CMC with Mama. Where are you?" No response. I call Whitney, Francine's 34-year-old daughter, my niece. It rings 4 times, then voicemail. I don't leave a message. Finally, a doctor comes out. She's South Asian, maybe in her early 40s, wearing scrubs and an expression that makes my stomach drop. She introduces herself as Dr. Patel and asks me to follow her to a private consultation room. That's never good. We sit in a small room with generic landscape paintings on the walls and a box of tissues on the table. Dr. Patel sits across from me, and her voice is clinically professional, but I can see anger burning in her eyes. "Ms. Hammond, your mother is severely dehydrated and malnourished. She has stage 3 pressure ulcers. Those are bed sores that have penetrated through the skin and fat tissue into the underlying muscle. She has a kidney infection that has gone untreated for what appears to be several weeks, possibly longer. Her current weight is 89 pounds. The room spins. 89 pounds. When I left for Dubai, Mama weighed 127. "These pressure ulcers don't develop overnight," Dr. Patel continues, and there's steel in her voice now. "Your mother has been bedbound, without proper repositioning or care, for a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks, possibly longer. Ms. Hammond," she pauses, making sure I'm looking at her. "Your mother is approximately 72 hours from complete organ failure. If you hadn't found her when you did, she would have died this weekend. I can't speak, can't breathe. All I can do is stare at this doctor who's telling me my mother almost died because I wasn't here. Adult Protective Services has been automatically notified, Dr. Patel says. This is a mandatory report for healthcare providers. The police will want to speak with you. You mentioned a sister was providing care? I've been sending her $2,000 a month, I hear myself say, for 18 months, to take care of our mother. Dr. Patel's expression hardens. I see. Do you have documentation of those payments? I nod. You'll want to provide that to the police. There's a knock on the door, and a black woman about my age enters. She's wearing a badge that identifies her as Tamara Chen, social worker. She has a kind face but tired eyes, eyes that have seen too much suffering. Ms. Hammond, I'm Tamara. I'm going to be working with your mother's case. I need to ask you some questions if that's all right. I nod again, numb. When was the last time you physically saw your mother? 18 months ago, October, before I left for Dubai. And you've been sending money to your sister for care during that time? Yes, $2,000 a month, wired to her account on the first of every month. Have you been back to visit during those 18 months? No, I had video calls, but my voice breaks. The calls got less frequent. By month 6, it was mostly just texts and occasional photos. Tamara makes notes. Ms. Hammond, did your sister ever express feeling overwhelmed or ask for additional help? No, never. She always said everything was fine. I see. More notes. Then she looks up at me. The paramedics found something when they were moving your mother. There were documents hidden under the mattress. Property documents. The police have secured them as evidence. Property documents. The house. Daddy's house. The house he specifically left to Mama with instructions to pass to me when she died. My phone buzzes. I look down. It's a text from Whitney. Aunt B, Mom said you showed up unannounced and made a scene. She's really upset. Can we talk? I stare at that text. Made a scene. I found my mother dying of neglect and starvation, and according to Francine, I made a scene. Where the hell is she? Why isn't she here? Why isn't she falling apart at the news that Mama almost died? But what I didn't know yet was that this wasn't neglect born of overwhelm. This was a plan, and it had been unfolding for over a year. There's another knock at the door. A black man in his 50s enters, wearing a detective's badge on his belt. He has graying temples and the calm, measured demeanor of someone who's seen the worst humanity has to offer and learned how to stay professional anyway. Ms. Hammond, I'm Detective Morris. I need to speak with you about your mother's situation. He sits down, pulls out a small notebook. We're opening a criminal investigation into elder abuse and financial exploitation. I'm going to need your complete financial records, every transfer you made to your sister, dates, amounts, any communication you had about the arrangements. Can you provide those? Yes, I have everything. Good. We also need to locate your sister immediately. Do you know where she's currently living? And that's when it hits me. I've been sending my sister $36,000 over 18 months, and I don't know where she lives. I don't know her address. I couldn't tell this detective how to find her. The betrayal crystallizes in that moment, sharp and clear as glass. I've been sending money into a void, trusting blindly, while my mother starved in darkness 1,000 feet from where I'm sitting right now. No, I whisper. I don't know where she is. Detective Morris writes something in his notebook. We'll find her? Ms. Hammond, I want to be straight with you. Based on what we've seen today, your sister is likely facing felony charges. This is serious. You need to understand that. I understand. I understand that my sister took my money, abandoned our mother, and let her almost die. I understand that I trusted her and she betrayed that trust in the most horrific way possible. But I don't understand why. To understand how my sister could do this to our mother, you need to know what our family was before I left for Dubai. You need to know what I missed or what I chose not to see. You need to understand where this started. Not 18 months ago when I got on that plane to Dubai. This started decades ago, in the house where I found my mother dying. My sister Francine and I grew up in that same 3-bedroom brick house in Biddleville. The house my father Vernon bought in 1968 when integrating Charlotte neighborhoods wasn't just controversial, it was dangerous. Daddy used to tell us stories about the first year they lived there. Broken windows, threatening letters. A cross burned in the yard of the Black family 3 houses down. But Daddy was stubborn. He'd worked at First Union Bank for 3 years by then, and he refused to let fear dictate where his family could live. He worked at that bank for 32 years total, rising to branch manager. Mama taught 2nd grade at Biddleville Elementary for 28 years. They weren't wealthy. We never took fancy vacations or drove new cars, but we were stable, respected, rooted in our community so deep that everybody knew the Hammond family. Francine and I were different from the start. I'm 4 years older, and I was the serious one, the studious one, made straight A's, went to UNC Charlotte on a partial scholarship, got my degree in healthcare administration. I wanted security, a career I could build on, something solid. Francine was the creative one, artistic. She could draw anything, could walk into a room and immediately see how to rearrange it to make it beautiful. She was social, had a million friends, was the life of every party, but she never found her professional path. She tried interior design for a while, worked at a boutique, did some event planning, nothing stuck. And at 24, she married a man named Gerald, who seemed charming at first, but turned out to be controlling and financially reckless. That marriage lasted 12 years. When it ended, Francine was 52 years old, with debt she hadn't accumulated, damaged credit from accounts Gerald had opened in her name, and no career to fall back on. She ended up working retail at a department store in South Park Mall, making barely $1,400 a month. I tried to help, gave her money for rent a few times, helped her pay off one of Gerald's credit cards. But you can't fix someone else's financial situation when they're barely staying afloat. I did what I could, but I also had my own life, my own career. Then 8 years ago, Daddy died. Massive heart attack at 77. He was getting ready for church on a Sunday morning, fixing his tie in the bathroom mirror, and he just collapsed. Gone before the ambulance arrived. Mama was devastated. They'd been married for 53 years. The will reading was 2 weeks after the funeral. Daddy's lawyer, Mr. Patterson, a white man who'd been his friend for 30 years, read it in his office downtown. Mama, Francine, and I sat there listening. Most of it was expected. Some money divided between Francine and me. Daddy's car to Mama. But then came the house. The property located at 2247 Oakwood Avenue shall remain in Pearl Hammond's name for the duration of her natural life. Upon her death, the property shall transfer in full to Beatrice Hammond. The silence in that office was deafening. Francine didn't say anything, didn't argue or protest, but I saw her face. I saw the hurt flash across her eyes before she locked it down. I saw the humiliation, the rejection, the feeling of being deemed less responsible, less trustworthy, less worthy than her older sister. Mr. Patterson explained that Daddy had been worried about Francine's financial situation. He'd seen how Gerald had destroyed her credit, and he was afraid that if the house went to both of us, Francine might be forced to sell her half to pay off debt, or worse, that creditors might put a lien on it. He wanted to protect the house, protect Mama's stability. It made sense legally. But emotionally? I'd just been chosen over my sister by our father. Even from the grave, he'd made it clear who he trusted more. After that, things were different between us. We still saw each other. Sunday dinners at Mama's continued. We celebrated birthdays and holidays, but there was a distance that hadn't been there before, a careful politeness. Francine came by the house often, helped Mama with grocery shopping and yard work. At least that's what she told me. I lived across town, worked long hours, so I wasn't there to see it myself. I just trusted that she was helping. Looking back now from that ICU waiting room, I can see every red flag I ignored, every warning I dismissed. When the Dubai position was offered last year, I was 51 years old and had been working toward a position like this my entire career. Senior hospital administrator for a major medical facility expansion project, 2-year contract, salary that would triple what I was making at Presbyterian Hospital in Charlotte. International experience that would set me apart in the healthcare administration field for the rest of my career. But Mama was 83, still sharp mentally, could still beat me at Scrabble, still remembered everyone's birthdays without writing them down. But physically, she was declining. She'd had 2 small falls in the past year, nothing serious, but concerning. She was having trouble with stairs. Sometimes she'd forget to take her blood pressure medication. I sat at her kitchen table trying to figure out how to turn down the opportunity of a lifetime. And that's when Francine made her suggestion. "Let me do this, Bea." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Let me take care of Mama. You take that position. You've earned it. You send me $2,000 a month. And I'll quit that retail job and move in here full time. I'll make sure Mama eats right, takes all her medications, gets to her doctor appointments. You won't have to worry about a thing." Her eyes were shining. She looked more animated than I'd seen her in years. "I'm barely making $1,400 a month at that store anyway, and I'm 58 years old. They're cutting hours, bringing in younger people. This would give me financial security, and more than that." She squeezed my hand. "It would give me a chance to contribute something meaningful to this family, to finally do something important. You're giving me a purpose, Bea. Please, let me do this for Mama. For you." I felt a wave of relief so powerful I almost started crying right there at the table. It was perfect. Mama would be cared for by family. Not some stranger from an agency. Francine would have the financial stability she desperately needed, and I could take this position without the crushing guilt of abandoning my mother. Everyone won. I said yes immediately. I left for Dubai in October, and for the first 2 months, it was everything Francine promised. We did FaceTime calls twice a week, Tuesday and Friday evenings, my time. Mama looked healthy, happy even. Her color was good. She was animated when she talked, telling me about her week, about church, about the neighbors. The house always looked clean in the background. Francine would pan the camera to show me the meals she'd made: baked chicken with collard greens, Mama's favorite pot roast, mac and cheese made from Mama's own recipe. "Your sister is taking such good care of me, baby," Mama would say, her face filling my phone screen. "She's here all the time, makes sure I eat, helps me with my bath, organizes all my pills. Don't you worry about a thing, you focus on that important job of yours." Francine had even planted flowers in the front garden, purple and yellow pansies that Mama loved. But around month 3, subtle changes started. The Tuesday call would get moved to Wednesday because Mama has a doctor's appointment. The Friday call would get pushed to Saturday because Mama's napping and I don't want to wake her. When we did connect, the calls got shorter. What used to be 30-minute conversations became 20, then 15, then 10. And Francine started looking different. Her hair was styled in an expensive-looking layered cut with highlights. She was wearing designer glasses. I recognized the Michael Kors logo because I'd priced them once for myself and decided $250 was too much for frames. Her nails were always freshly done, full-set acrylics with elaborate designs. She wore designer workout clothes even though she wasn't going to the gym. I noticed, but I rationalized it. The $2,000 a month wasn't just for Mama's direct expenses. Francine needed to take care of herself, too. A stressed, exhausted, burned-out caregiver wouldn't be good for anyone. If she was spending some of the money on self-care, hair appointments, nice glasses, maintaining her appearance, that was healthy. That showed she was managing her stress well, right? By month 6, we'd almost completely transitioned to text communication. I'd send a message. "How's Mama doing? Can we FaceTime this week?" Francine would reply hours later. "Mama's good. Been busy with appointments and errands. We'll try to call this weekend." The weekend would come and go with no call. Photos would arrive sporadically. Mama sitting in her floral armchair wearing that cream-colored robe, always shot from the exact same angle. Have you ever ignored warning signs because you wanted to believe family would do right? Tell me in the comments. The truth I'm facing now, sitting in this hospital waiting room with my mother fighting for her life 2 floors above me, is that I didn't want to dig deeper. I didn't want to question. Dubai was consuming every ounce of my energy. I was managing a 200-person staff, coordinating between 5 construction firms, navigating cultural differences and language barriers I'd never dealt with before. I was working 12-hour days, 6 days a week sometimes, coming home to my apartment exhausted, eating takeout over my laptop while reviewing budgets and timelines. And if I'm being completely, brutally honest with myself, I was relieved not to have to think about Mama constantly. Francine was handling it. That's what I told myself every single time I logged into my bank account and set up another $2,000 wire transfer. 18 monthly payments of $2,000. $36,000 total, plus the $3,200 for the hospital bed when Francine said Mama needed one, plus $890 for bathroom safety equipment, a shower chair, grab bars, non-slip mats, plus $1,500 for a medical alert system that Francine said she'd had installed, plus $5,000 in month 11 when Francine texted me, "Mama's having some medical issues, prescriptions not covered by insurance. Can you send extra this month?" I sent the $5,000 within an hour. Didn't ask what the prescriptions were for. Didn't ask to see receipts. Didn't ask anything. Grand total, $44,700. Not one receipt requested. Not one verification made. Family doesn't operate that way, I thought. You don't ask your sister for receipts when she's sacrificing her time to care for your mother. You trust family. That money represented so many things. My guilt about leaving, my love for Mama, my trust in my sister. My desperate need to believe that Francine had finally found something meaningful, that she was finally contributing, that our father's judgment in that will had been wrong. Every wire transfer was an act of faith. Every deposit was a prayer that Pearl was safe and cared for and loved. There was one moment, though, one moment that haunts me now more than any other. Month 14. Mrs. Gaines called me. Mrs. Gaines, our neighbor for over 20 years, a widow in her early 70s with silver locks and the kindest eyes. She'd brought us casseroles when Daddy died. She'd helped Mama with her garden when her arthritis got bad. She was family in every way that mattered except blood. Her voice on the phone was tentative, worried but trying not to overstep. "Honey, I haven't seen your Mama outside in months. Not in the yard. Not getting the mail, not sitting on the porch. Is everything okay? Is she all right?" I was in a meeting when she called. Stepped out into the hallway, irritated at the interruption. "Mrs. Gaines, my sister is caring for her full time now. She's fine. She's just not getting around as easily. That's why Francine's there." There was a pause. A long, heavy pause that I should have paid attention to. "If you say so, dear, I wanted to check on her. On both of them. Your Mama, well, I haven't seen her in so long and your sister's car is hardly ever in the driveway anymore. I just worry." I thanked her curtly and ended the call. Then I texted Francine. "Mrs. Gaines called worried about Mama. Maybe take her outside more? Fresh air would be good for her." Francine's response came back fast, and I can still see it on my phone screen. "Mrs. Gaines needs to mind her own business. Mama doesn't want to sit outside. It's too hot right now and she doesn't like the humidity. She's fine, Bea. Stop letting busybody neighbors make you paranoid. Everything here is fine." And I let it go. I dismissed a neighbor's genuine concern because my sister, the woman who was supposed to be caring for our mother, told me to. How do you live with knowing someone tried to warn you and you turned them away? Mrs. Gaines had tried to save my mother. She'd reached out, taken the risk of seeming nosy or intrusive because she was worried, and I'd shut her down. Told her everything was fine when clearly it wasn't. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined sitting in that hospital meeting room in Dubai, was that by month 14, my mother had already been abandoned. Francine had already stopped coming to the house except to grab mail or take photos to send me. The descent into the nightmare I discovered when I unlocked that door had been happening for almost a year. My mother had been suffering alone in that dark house while I wired money 8,000 miles away and convinced myself that trust was the same thing as love. The next day, day 2 in the hospital, the doctors finished their comprehensive assessment. They scheduled a care team meeting for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd been awake for over 30 hours straight at that point, surviving on hospital coffee and adrenaline, but I wouldn't have slept even if I could. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face, those cracked, bleeding lips, that skeletal body. Dr. Patel, remember, she's the South Asian doctor who'd first told me how bad Mama's condition was, sat across from me in a small conference room. Social worker Tamara was there too. They had medical records spread across the table like evidence at a crime scene. "Ms. Hammond," Dr. Patel began, her voice clinically professional, "I want to walk you through your mother's medical timeline so you understand the full scope of what we're dealing with." She slid a chart toward me. "Your mother's current weight is 89 pounds. According to her primary care physician's records from her last visit 18 months ago, she weighed 127 pounds. That's a loss of 38 pounds. 38 pounds, more than a quarter of her body weight. Gone. What Francine did next will shock you. Subscribe to see how this unfolds. If you're still not subscribing, tell me in the comments, what's holding you back? The pressure ulcers, bed sores, are classified as stage 3, Dr. Patel continued. That means the tissue damage extends through the skin and subcutaneous fat into the underlying muscle tissue. Ms. Hammond, these don't form overnight. They don't even form in a week. She paused, making sure I was looking at her. Your mother has been bedbound without proper repositioning or care for a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks, possibly longer. 6 to 8 weeks, 2 months. While I was in Dubai coordinating construction schedules and attending budget meetings, my mother was lying in that bed, unable to move, developing wounds that reached her muscles. The kidney infection originated as an untreated urinary tract infection that spread, Dr. Patel said. Her blood work shows chronic dehydration and severe protein-calorie malnutrition. Her muscle mass has deteriorated significantly from prolonged disuse. She looked down at her notes, and when she looked back up, there was anger in her eyes. When the paramedics documented the scene, they noted that your mother's last meal appeared to be days prior. The refrigerator in the home contained only expired items dated from March. It was late April now. Mama had been starving in that house for weeks. Let me take you back to that conference room, fluorescent lights humming overhead, Tamara's sympathetic hand on mine, the smell of hospital disinfectant that couldn't quite cover the scent of illness and fear. I forced myself to ask the question I'd been terrified to voice. Will she survive? Dr. Patel's expression softened slightly, which somehow made it worse. The next 72 hours are critical. We're treating the infection aggressively with IV antibiotics and administering nutrition through feeding tubes. But Ms. Hammond, your mother's body is severely compromised. Even if she survives, and I believe she will, she'll require extensive rehabilitation. The muscle atrophy is significant. She may never walk independently again. The room tilted. Never walk again, because of neglect, because I wasn't here. I need you to understand something, Dr. Patel said, leaning forward. This level of neglect represents sustained, deliberate abandonment. This wasn't someone who got overwhelmed last week and made a mistake. This was weeks, possibly months, of complete abandonment. Abandonment. There was that word again. My mother had been abandoned, left to die slowly in darkness, while my sister— Tamara touched my arm gently. Ms. Hammond, Adult Protective Services has completed their initial review. Detective Morris will be here within the hour. He has questions about the financial arrangement with your sister. She hesitated, then added, "We've located her. She's been living with her boyfriend in a townhouse in South End." South End, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Charlotte. Luxury high-rises and renovated townhouses where rent started at $1,800 a month. A woman receiving $2,000 monthly for elder care shouldn't be able to afford South End, Tamara said quietly. The detective wants to know how. The next day, day 3, Detective Morris returned with manila folders that he spread across the hospital conference table, like playing cards in a game I'd already lost. He was methodical, thorough, the kind of detective who'd built cases on paper trails and receipts. "Ms. Hammond, I've traced every transaction your sister made since you started sending her money." He opened the first folder. Months 1 and 2 show normal expenditures: grocery stores, pharmacy, medical supply retailers, everything you'd expect from someone providing elder care. He opened the second folder. Month 3, everything changes. April 15th, your sister made a $15,000 down payment on a Lexus GX SUV from a dealership in Pineville. From that point forward, she had monthly car payments of $780. I felt my hands go numb. A Lexus. She'd bought a Lexus with money meant for Mama's care. Month 5, Detective Morris continued, sliding another document toward me. She paid a contractor $6,200 for renovations to her boyfriend's townhouse, kitchen appliances, new countertops. Backsplash. He didn't wait for me to process that before moving to the next folder. Month 8, $4,500 charged to her credit card for a week-long vacation to Turks and Caicos. She paid off that charge the same day you wired that month's payment. My vision blurred. I'd been sitting in my Dubai apartment working 16-hour days, and my sister had been on a Caribbean beach drinking cocktails with money meant to feed our mother. Months 10 through 16, the detective said, his voice harder now. Luxury apartment rent averaging $1,850 a month, furniture stores, hair salons charging $200+ per appointment, Nordstrom, Tory Burch, Michael Kors. Your sister wasn't just neglecting your mother, Ms. Hammond. She was financing an aspirational lifestyle she couldn't afford on your mother's suffering. He slid one more document across the table. She also withdrew $8,000 from your mother's personal checking account over a 6-month period using power of attorney. Did you know your sister had POA over your mother's finances? No. My voice came out as a whisper. Daddy never would have agreed to that. She obtained it after your father's death, Detective Morris said. Your mother signed it 3 years ago when your sister convinced her it was necessary for managing bills while your mother's arthritis was bad. We're investigating whether your mother understood what she was signing. He gathered the folders back together. Despite receiving $36,000 from you, your sister is currently $8,000 in credit card debt. She spent money faster than it came in. She was living beyond her means, and your mother paid the price. My hands were shaking. I couldn't speak. We contacted your sister yesterday, Detective Morris said. She's agreed to come in for questioning tomorrow. She's retained an attorney. Francine hired a lawyer before checking on whether our mother survived. That detail crystallized everything. She knew. She knew what she'd done. And instead of rushing to the hospital, instead of begging forgiveness, she'd called a lawyer to protect herself. Based on the evidence we've gathered, the detective continued, we're pursuing charges of criminal elder abuse, financial exploitation of an elderly, vulnerable adult, and fraud. These are felonies, Ms. Hammond. Your sister is facing 5 to 10 years in prison if convicted. He stood, gathering his files, then paused at the door. One more thing. Those property documents found under your mother's mattress. It's a quitclaim deed transferring the house to your sister, dated 4 months ago. We're investigating whether your mother was mentally competent to consent or if she was coerced. If she was forced or misled, that's another charge. Exploitation for financial gain. The house. Daddy's house. The house he'd specifically left to Mama with instructions to pass to me because he didn't trust Francine not to lose it. And Francine had tried to steal it anyway while Mama starved. 4 days later, day 7, Detective Morris called and told me I could return to the house. They'd finished processing it as a crime scene. I needed to pack some things for Mama. Clothes, personal items for when she was stable enough to transfer to a regular room. I didn't want to go back there. Didn't want to smell that smell or see that bedroom again. But Mama needed things, so I drove to Biddleville. Mrs. Gaines, remember, she's the neighbor who'd called me months ago trying to warn me, was waiting on her front porch when I pulled up. She's in her 70s with beautiful silver locks, and she'd been crying. Her eyes were red and swollen. "I'm coming with you," she said. It wasn't a question. "You shouldn't go in there alone." The house still smelled terrible. Death and neglect and rot. I'd have to hire professionals to clean it, I realized. I couldn't ask anyone to live here until every trace of what happened was scrubbed away. The living room was worse in daylight. Dust everywhere. The coffee table buried under months of unopened mail. I picked up one envelope, a bill from Duke Energy dated February, another from the water company dated January. Francine hadn't even been opening Mama's mail. In the kitchen, I found spoiled milk in the refrigerator with a date from February, moldy bread, expired yogurt from December. The trash can was overflowing with takeout containers, all from the same Thai restaurant in South End, nowhere near this neighborhood. Francine had been stopping by occasionally to grab mail and take photos, then going back to her luxury life. Mrs. Gaines stood in the doorway to Mama's bedroom, crying quietly. I knew something was wrong. I filed a wellness check request with social services 5 weeks ago. I called their hotline, told them I hadn't seen Miss Pearl in months, that something felt wrong. They said they'd send someone out to check on her. No one ever came. Bureaucracy had failed my mother, too. Someone had filed paperwork, and it had gotten lost in a system that was supposed to protect vulnerable elders, but instead let them die in darkness while forms sat in someone's inbox. I moved to the hospital bed where I'd found Mama. The sheets had been taken as evidence, but the mattress was still there, stained and terrible. I lifted it carefully, and underneath, exactly where the paramedics had said, I found the manila folder. Inside was a quitclaim deed with my mother's signature, barely legible, shaky, nothing like her usually neat handwriting. The date was 4 months ago, December. There was a notarized power of attorney document giving Francine control over all of Mama's financial and medical decisions. And then, paper clipped to the deed, a note on Mama's floral stationery. The handwriting was weak, spidery, but unmistakably hers. Fran said I had to sign this or she couldn't afford my medicine. Beatrice doesn't know. God forgive me. My legs gave out. I collapsed to the floor, that note clutched in my hand, Pearl's handwriting blurring through my tears. She'd been coerced, threatened, told that her medications, her heart medicine, her blood pressure pills, the things keeping her alive, would be taken away unless she signed over her house, and she'd done it. Then hidden this note because some part of her, even sick and weak and terrified, knew it was wrong. Mrs. Gaines helped me to a chair, her hands gentle on my shoulders. Then she pulled out her cell phone. "Baby, I need to show you something. I have a Ring doorbell camera on my front porch. It faces the street. I can see your Mama's driveway from it." She pulled up footage dated 2 months ago, March. I watched the screen as a moving truck backed into Mama's driveway. Then Francine appeared, my sister in designer sunglasses and expensive athleisure wear, directing 2 men in work clothes. They carried furniture out of the house, Daddy's antique dresser that had been his father's, the china cabinet with Mama's good dishes, a credenza that had been in our family for 3 generations. She sold your mama's furniture, Mrs. Gaines said, her voice shaking with rage and grief. I watched her load up family heirlooms and sell them. I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe Miss Pearl had agreed to it. Maybe she'd decided to downsize. But it felt wrong. It felt so wrong. She sold the furniture. She forged signatures. She let Mama starve. She did all of this while I sent money, while I trusted her, while I believed family meant something. Mrs. Gaines pulled up more footage. I went back through my recordings. Your sister visited this house exactly 4 times in the last 3 months. December 23rd for about an hour, January 15th for maybe 20 minutes, February 9th for less than 10 minutes, and March 12th when the movers came, 4 times in 3 months, and she never stayed long enough to care for anyone. I photographed Mama's note with my phone and texted it to Detective Morris. His response came within 60 seconds. This is evidence of coercion and exploitation under duress. Forwarding to DA. Significantly strengthens our case. Ms. Hammond, prepare yourself. Your niece Whitney has been calling our office claiming you're overreacting, and this is a family misunderstanding. She may contact you to pressure you to drop charges. Would you have called the police on your own sister? Tell me in the comments. 3 days later, day 10, I was sitting with Mama in the ICU when my phone rang. Whitney, my niece, Francine's daughter, 34 years old. I hadn't spoken to her since that text the first day. I answered, "Hello, Whitney." "Aunt B, what are you doing to my mom?" Her voice was defensive, almost hostile. "She's devastated. She told me you called the police on her, that she's being charged with crimes. She was taking care of Grandma. She just got overwhelmed, and instead of helping her, you're trying to destroy her." Something cold settled in my chest. "Whitney, have you seen your grandmother?" Mom said Grandma refused care, that she was being difficult. "Have you seen her?" I interrupted, steel in every word. Silence. Then, "Mom said you won't let anyone visit." I realized in that moment that Francine had been lying to everyone, controlling the narrative, playing the victim. "Come to the hospital, Whitney. ICU, room 412. Come see what your mother did to your grandmother." "Aunt B, I don't think now. Come now or don't ever contact me again." She arrived an hour later with her boyfriend, a thin white man in his late 30s who kept his eyes down. Detective Morris had mentioned him. He was the one who'd helped Francine move furniture to sell. I met them at the ICU entrance. Didn't say a word, just walked them to Mama's room and opened the door. Whitney stepped inside and stopped dead. Oh my God. Mama was unconscious, intubated, her skeletal 89-pound body barely making a shape under the blankets. Bandages covered the bed sores. IV lines ran into both arms. Machines beeped and hissed, breathing for her, monitoring every struggling heartbeat. "This is what your mother did," I said quietly. "Read this." I handed Whitney the hospital report, made her read every brutal detail, the malnutrition, the bed sores that reached muscle tissue, the kidney infection, the weeks of complete abandonment. Then I handed her the financial records Detective Morris had given me. $36,000, the Lexus, the vacation, the furniture sales. Whitney's boyfriend shifted uncomfortably toward the door. "Whitney, we should leave." But Whitney wasn't listening. She was crying, her hands shaking as she held the papers. "My mom said, she said Grandma was fine. She said you were overreacting because you felt guilty for leaving. She said Grandma refused help and there was nothing she could do." "Your mother paid your rent for 3 months, I said, my voice unforgiving. "February, March, and April. $3,600 total. Money that was supposed to buy your grandmother food and medicine and care. You benefited from this too, Whitney. The money that kept you housed came from Pearl's suffering." Whitney's face crumbled. "I didn't know. Aunt B, I swear to God, I didn't know where the money came from. She told me she'd gotten a better job. She said..." Her voice broke completely. "I didn't know." And just like that, Whitney understood. The anger drained from her face, replaced by horror at what her mother had become. She left the hospital 20 minutes later, still crying while her boyfriend drove. My phone buzzed before she'd even reached the parking lot. A text from cousin Denise. Family meeting tomorrow at my house at 3 p.m. to discuss this situation before it goes too far. We need to keep this in the family, not let the courts tear us apart. Please come. I looked at Mama's unconscious form, at the machines breathing for her, at the bandages covering wounds that went to the muscle, at what my sister had done to the woman who'd given birth to her. I texted back, "I'll be there." But I already knew I wasn't dropping anything. The family could choose whose side they wanted to be on. I'd already chosen Pearl's. Day 14. 2 weeks since I'd found Mama dying in that dark bedroom. 2 weeks of sleeping in hospital chairs, drinking terrible coffee, watching machines breathe for my mother. I was sitting in her ICU room when there was a knock at the door. What happens in the confrontation will stun you. Subscribe. If you're still not subscribing, tell me in the comments. What's holding you back? A woman I'd never seen before entered, followed by another woman carrying thick document folders. The first woman introduced herself as the hospital patient advocate. The second was Janet Richter, an attorney from the public guardian's office. A white woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a briefcase that looked like it held bad news. "Ms. Hammond," Janet said, sitting across from me, "we've subpoenaed your mother's complete medical records, including records from visits you weren't aware of." My stomach dropped. "What visits?" Janet opened one of the folders. 3 months ago, your mother was brought to Quick Care Urgent Center on South Boulevard by your sister Francine. Your mother had fallen and sustained a wrist fracture. I went absolutely still. Mama fell? Broke her wrist? 3 months ago, and I knew nothing about it? The attending physician documented extensive notes, Janet said, sliding papers across the bedside table. "I need you to read these." My hands were trembling as I picked up the medical records. The doctor's handwriting was neat, clinical. Patient brought in by daughter, Francine Hammond. Daughter reports patient lives alone, has no consistent family support, is increasingly confused and non-compliant with care instructions. Daughter states patient refuses to eat properly, refuses medications, becoming danger to herself. Daughter appears frustrated and overwhelmed. I read that line 3 times. Lives alone. My sister was being paid $2,000 a month to live there and provide full-time care, and she told a doctor that Mama lived alone. The notes continued. Assessment. Patient is underweight, appears malnourished, bruising on arms consistent with multiple falls. Patient very quiet during examination, defers all questions to daughter. Cognitive screening shows some confusion, likely pain-related. Recommendation: strongly advise facility placement or in-home care services. Patient may lack capacity for independent living. Recommend evaluation for guardianship if family cannot provide adequate supervision. I read it again, then a 3rd time. Every single word was a lie, a calculated, deliberate lie. Now here's what you need to understand about guardianship fraud. Once someone is declared incompetent, they lose all autonomy, all control. They become invisible. "Ms. Hammond," Janet said quietly, "this wasn't just neglect. This was premeditated. Your sister was building a paper trail to have your mother declared incompetent. If she'd succeeded, she could have gained full guardianship. That would give her the legal authority to make all medical and financial decisions for your mother. She could have sold the house, placed your mother in a facility, likely the cheapest one available, and kept all the proceeds for herself." The patient advocate added, "We cross-referenced the timeline. 2 weeks after this urgent care visit, your sister attempted to take out a reverse mortgage on your mother's house using the power of attorney. The application was denied because they required a secondary family member's signature. That would have been you. That's likely the only reason she didn't pursue it further. She couldn't get your signature without revealing what she was doing." I felt physically sick. This wasn't a woman who got overwhelmed and made mistakes. This was a con, a systematic plan to strip my mother of everything, her dignity, her health, her home, her very autonomy as a human being, and profit from it legally. While Mama was starving in that bedroom, my sister was Googling guardianship laws and reverse mortgage requirements. This was calculated abuse as a business plan. 2 days later, day 16, I sat in a hospital conference room waiting for what Detective Morris had called a pre-charging meeting. He'd asked both me and Francine to attend, along with Pearl's care team, a victim advocate from the DA's office, and Tamara, the social worker. I arrived early. I'd been wearing the same gray cardigan for 3 days. My hair was pulled back in a messy bun I'd done without looking in a mirror. No makeup. Eyes hollowed out from 2 weeks of sleeping upright in hospital chairs. I looked like exactly what I was, a woman who'd been living in a hospital while her mother fought to survive. At 2:08 p.m., my sister walked in. I barely recognized her. Francine was dressed like she was going to court. Navy blazer, cream-colored blouse, pressed slacks. Her makeup was perfect. Her hair was styled in a sleek bob. She looked composed, professional, put together. She looked like the victim of some terrible misunderstanding, not the woman who'd left our mother to die. Her lawyer followed her in, a white man in his 40s wearing an expensive suit. Francine's eyes met mine for maybe half a second before darting away. She sat on the opposite side of the table. The room hummed with fluorescent lights and tension so thick it was hard to breathe. Detective Morris began. We're here to review findings before the district attorney's office proceeds with formal charges against Ms. Francine Hammond. He laid it all out methodically like a prosecutor building a case. The medical timeline, the financial records, the property documents, the urgent care visit where Francine lied to doctors, the reverse mortgage application. Each piece of evidence was a bomb detonating in the quiet room. Then he slid 2 documents across the table to Francine. Pearl's handwritten note about being coerced into signing the deed, and the urgent care medical records. Ms. Hammond, he said, looking directly at Francine, would you like to explain these? Francine's careful composure cracked at the edges. Her lawyer leaned over, whispered something in her ear. I watched her shake her head. She was going to speak. I was overwhelmed. Her voice was shaking. Taking care of an elderly person is incredibly hard, Beatrice. You have no idea because you left. You got on a plane and abandoned her. Abandoned me to deal with everything alone. I wish I could tell you I stayed calm. I wish I could tell you I took the high road. But something inside me snapped, clean through. The room went completely still. I felt 2 weeks of grief and rage and guilt crystallize into something cold and sharp and focused. When I spoke, my voice was quiet, deadly quiet. You let our mother lie in her own waste for money. You let her starve. You let her beg for water while you drove around in a car I paid for a vacation, Francine, for furniture, for a lifestyle you couldn't afford. You took $36,000 meant for her care, and you let her develop wounds that go to the muscle. Francine's face crumpled. Then it hardened again. The tears started. You left. You got on a plane and left her. I was here. I was the one who stayed, who had to deal with her every single day until I couldn't do it anymore. Where were you when she fell, when she needed help? You were in Dubai living your best life. Sending money like that fixes anything. My voice dropped even lower. Pure ice. I was working to pay you. I trusted you. She trusted you. You weren't overwhelmed. You were planning. The urgent care visit where you told doctors she lived alone, the reverse mortgage application, the guardianship paper trail you were building. That's not being overwhelmed, Francine. That's calculated abuse. Her lawyer tried to interrupt. My client made some mistakes under extreme stress. But I wasn't finished. You let her almost die. 89 pounds. 72 hours from complete organ failure when I found her. That's not stress, Francine. That's evil. The word hung in the air between us. Evil. Francine sobbed. I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I needed the money. And then I couldn't face her, and then too much time passed and I didn't know how to fix it. Detective Morris stood. Ms. Francine Hammond, you are being formally charged with criminal elder abuse, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and fraud. You'll receive notice of your arraignment within the week. You are facing 5 to 10 years in prison if convicted. Would you ever be able to forgive something like this? Tell me in the comments. As everyone started filing out of the room, Francine tried to approach me. Her lawyer had his hand on her arm, trying to guide her out, but she pulled away. "B, please." Her voice was desperate. "We're sisters. Don't do this. Don't send me to prison. I'll pay everything back. I'll make it right. I promise. I stood up. Francine actually took a step back when she saw my face. "You're not my sister," I said. Every word felt like it was being carved out of stone. My sister would have called me if she was overwhelmed, would have asked for help, would have protected our mother. You're a stranger who shares my blood, and you nearly killed the woman who gave birth to you for a car payment. I walked out. In the hallway, my legs gave out. I slid down the wall to the floor, my whole body shaking. Tamara, remember, she's the social worker who'd been with me since the beginning, sat down beside me. She didn't say anything, just sat there while I tried to breathe. There was nothing to say. The betrayal was complete. The confrontation was over. But I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I just felt hollow, empty, like something essential had been carved out of my chest. I'd saved my mother's life, but I'd lost my sister, not to death, but to something worse, to greed, to lies, to a cruelty I couldn't have imagined her capable of, and I still had one more impossible decision to make. 3 days later, I was sitting in the district attorney's office, about to make a decision that would define the rest of my life. That evening, after the confrontation, my phone rang. Patricia Coleman, the district attorney, a black woman in her 50s who'd been handling Mama's case, was calling me directly. "Ms. Hammond, I wanted to talk to you before we proceed. The charges against your sister are solid. The evidence is overwhelming. If we go to trial, we will get a conviction. She'll serve 7 to 10 years minimum." I didn't say anything, just waited. But her attorney has already approached us about a plea deal. No prison time. 2 years suspended sentence, 5 years probation, community service at an elder care facility, mandatory mental health treatment, and full restitution. They want to avoid trial. And honestly, trials are expensive for everyone involved, emotionally and financially. Patricia paused. "The decision is ultimately mine as the prosecutor, but this is your mother. You're the one who found her. You're the one who's been sitting in that hospital for 2 weeks. So I'm asking you, what do you want to see happen here?" I looked at Mama. She was still unconscious most of the time, machines breathing for her, IV lines in both arms. Her body was so thin under the blankets you could barely tell someone was there. What did I want? Justice? Mercy? Revenge? Family? I didn't know anymore. The days after the confrontation felt surreal, like I was living in someone else's nightmare. The legal decision I made changes everything. Subscribe to see. If you're still not subscribing, tell me in the comments, what's holding you back? Mama was still in the ICU, but she was improving, slowly. The kidney infection was responding to the IV antibiotics. She was gaining weight through feeding tubes. She'd hit 94 pounds, 5 pounds more than when I'd found her. The doctors were treating the bed sores with specialized dressings and repositioning protocols. But she was unconscious most of the time. And when she did wake up, she was confused, disoriented. She didn't know where she was. She didn't recognize me half the time. And she didn't remember being abandoned. Dr. Patel told me that might be a mercy. Trauma sometimes erases itself to protect us. My phone rang on day 18. Whitney, remember, she's my niece, Francine's daughter, the one who'd seen Mama in the ICU and finally understood what her mother had done. She'd called 3 times before I finally answered. Aunt B. Her voice was completely different from that first defensive call. Small, ashamed. I went through my bank records, like you said. My mom paid my rent for February, March, and April. That's $3,600 total. I heard her crying. I didn't know where it came from. I should have asked. I should have questioned it. I'm so sorry, Aunt B. I'm so sorry. What can I do? How can I make this right? I sat in that ICU waiting room, exhausted, running on hospital coffee and guilt, and I told her the truth. You can testify. If this goes to trial, you tell the court exactly what you just told me, that your mother lied about having a better job, that you had no idea about the neglect. You stand with your grandmother, not your mother. The line went quiet for a long moment. Then, okay, I will. I promise I will. One ally gained from the wreckage. The family gathering Cousin Denise had planned, the one where they were going to pressure me to drop charges and keep this in the family, never happened because the story hit the news. Charlotte woman, charged with elder abuse after sister discovers mother near death. Local news picked it up first, then the Charlotte Observer. Social media exploded when someone leaked the Ring camera footage Mrs. Gaines had given to police. And watching that footage, watching Francine in her designer sunglasses directing movers to take furniture out of Mama's house while Mama lay dying inside, changed everything. Cousin Denise texted me, "B, I'm so sorry. I had no idea it was this bad. I thought maybe there'd been some miscommunication, some misunderstanding. But this, whatever you need, we're here for you and Miss Pearl." Other relatives echoed the same sentiment. Aunts and uncles and cousins who'd initially thought I was overreacting, who'd been ready to defend Francine, turned completely. Francine was functionally excommunicated from the family. She was alone, except for her lawyer. Have you ever watched someone's entire support system collapse in real time? It's not satisfying. It's just sad. I returned to Mama's house one last time with professional cleaners. It took 6 hours to make it livable again. While they worked, I went through what was left of Mama's belongings. In a drawer in the kitchen, I found pawn shop receipts, Daddy's watch, the gold Belova his father had given him when he made branch manager, pawned for $350. Mama's wedding ring, pawned for $200. A silver tea service that had been in our family for 3 generations, pawned for $180. Francine had systematically stripped the house of everything valuable, everything with history, with meaning, with love attached to it, and she'd traded it all for cash to fund a lifestyle she couldn't afford. The rage I felt wasn't hot anymore. It was cold, crystallized into pure determination. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I sat in District Attorney Patricia Coleman's office. Detective Morris was there too, along with a victim advocate I'd been assigned. Patricia, remember, she's the black woman in her 50s who'd been handling Mama's case from the prosecutor's side, laid out my options clearly. Ms. Hammond, we have an airtight case against your sister. The medical evidence alone is damning. Add in the financial records, the forged documents, the urgent care visit where she lied to doctors, the reverse mortgage attempt. It's overwhelming. If we go to trial, your sister will be convicted. She'll serve 7 to 10 years minimum in a state prison. She paused, watching my face. But her attorney has proposed a plea deal. Your sister would plead guilty to all charges. In exchange, she'd receive a 2-year suspended sentence, 5 years probation, 500 hours of community service specifically at an elder care facility, where she'd have to witness firsthand the consequences of the kind of abuse she committed. She'd also be required to complete mandatory mental health treatment and pay full restitution, $36,000 at $500 per month for 6 years. Patricia leaned forward. She would also permanently forfeit any claim to your mother's estate, and she would be legally prohibited from any contact with Pearl. No prison time, unless she violates the terms of her probation. Then she goes to prison immediately. She looked directly at me. The decision is ultimately mine as the prosecutor. But this is your mother. You're the one who found her. You're the one who's been living in this hospital. So I'm asking you, what do you want to see happen here? I asked the question that had been haunting me. If we go to trial and Francine goes to prison, what happens to Whitney? She's a single mother. I know she depends on Francine for childcare sometimes. Patricia was blunt. If Francine goes to prison, Whitney loses that support. That's not your responsibility to solve, Ms. Hammond, but I understand why you're asking. I sat with that. Francine deserved prison. She deserved to lose years of her life the way Mama had lost 38 pounds and nearly lost everything. She deserved to feel what it was like to be powerless, abandoned, left alone. But Whitney's children, Mama's great-grandchildren, ages 3 and 6, they were innocent in all this. And Mama herself, if she could speak clearly, if she could tell me what she wanted, what would she say? Sometimes the right decision isn't the one that feels good. Sometimes justice and healing aren't the same thing. I made my decision. I'll accept the plea deal, but I want 2 additions that are non-negotiable. First, Francine must make a full written confession detailing everything she did. No sanitized version, no excuses, the complete truth, and it has to be read aloud at her sentencing hearing. Patricia nodded, making notes. And second, the restitution money doesn't come to me. It goes into a trust specifically for Mama's ongoing care, a trust that I manage. Francine doesn't get to pay me back and call it even. She pays for the care she should have been providing all along. Patricia smiled grimly. I'll make it happen. A week before Francine's sentencing hearing, Mrs. Gaines called me. Honey, you need to come over. I found something else on my Ring camera, something from way back that I think you need to see. I drove to Biddleville. Mrs. Gaines showed me footage from 14 months ago, month 4 of my time in Dubai. It showed a young Latina woman leaving Mama's house in the middle of the day, carrying bags, her shoulders shaking like she was crying. She loaded everything into a small sedan and drove away. I remember this, Mrs. Gaines said. That was the aide your sister hired. I met her a few times when I was bringing Miss Pearl some of my pound cake. Sweet girl. Sophia, I think her name was. Your sister fired her that day. Told me she wasn't needed anymore, that she could handle things herself. I called Detective Morris immediately. He tracked down the aide through Francine's bank records. She'd paid someone named Sophia Martinez for exactly 2 months before the payment stopped. The detective located her and asked if she'd be willing to talk to me. We met at a coffee shop in South End 2 days later. Sophia Martinez was maybe 30 years old with kind eyes and nervous hands that kept fidgeting with her napkin. Miss Hammond, I need you to know, I tried. I really tried. She was almost in tears before we even started. I worked for your sister for 2 months taking care of Miss Pearl. Your mother was doing okay back then. She needed help with bathing, cooking, getting around the house. But she was mentally sharp, you know? We talk about her teaching days, about you working overseas. She was so proud of you. Sophia's voice cracked. But your sister, she didn't like me being there. She'd make comments about how I was making her feel like she wasn't trusted, like I was watching her. One day she just told me Miss Pearl didn't need me anymore, that she was going to take over the care herself full time. I was worried, Sophia continued. I tried to give your sister my phone number. I told her to call me any time if she needed help, if she got overwhelmed. She took the paper and threw it in the trash right in front of me. After I left, I called the house twice to check on Miss Pearl. Your sister answered both times. She told me to stop calling, said I was harassing them, and if I didn't stop, she'd file a complaint against me. Sophia looked at me with tears running down her face. I didn't know what else to do. I thought maybe I was overstepping. I'm so sorry I didn't push harder. I'm so sorry. I realized in that moment that Francine had actively, deliberately eliminated the one person who was actually caring for Mama. This wasn't a woman who got overwhelmed gradually. This was calculated isolation. Remove the witnesses. Make sure no one could see what was really happening. Sophia's testimony was added to the case file. One more piece of evidence that this had been planned, intentional, criminal from the very beginning. If you're watching this and thinking about an elderly parent you haven't checked on in a while, call them. Today. Right now. Don't assume someone else is handling it. I spent those weeks in therapy, processing everything. The hospital social worker had recommended a therapist who specialized in family trauma. I sat in her office twice a week, working through the guilt and rage and grief. I'd believed that family loyalty meant trusting without verification, that sending money was the same as providing care, that blood relation meant inherent trustworthiness. I'd carried so much guilt about taking the Dubai position, about not being physically present, about pursuing my career instead of staying in Charlotte. But I learned something. I learned that love requires accountability, that real family protection means asking hard questions and actually verifying that people are okay. That money without oversight isn't helping, it's enabling. I don't carry that guilt anymore about Dubai. That position wasn't abandonment. It was career advancement I'd earned over decades of work. What happened to Mama wasn't my fault for leaving. It was Francine's fault for stealing and lying and abandoning. I learned to trust my instincts. When Mrs. Gaines called worried, I should have listened. When the video calls stopped, I should have insisted. When something felt wrong, I should have investigated instead of rationalizing it away. And I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I'm working on forgiving Francine, not for her sake, but for mine, so I can have peace. But forgiveness doesn't mean she gets access to my life or Mama's life ever again. Some doors, once closed, should stay closed forever. 3 months after I found Mama dying in that house, I made 2 major decisions. First, I officially resigned from my position in Dubai. The hospital was understanding. They offered me a remote consulting role I could do from Charlotte, coordinating medical facility expansions from home. I accepted. Second, I began the process of moving Mama to Shady Grove Senior Living, a memory care facility in Charlotte's Myers Park neighborhood. It was expensive, $3,800 a month. But the restitution payments from Francine would cover $500 of that, and I'd cover the rest. I wasn't delegating my mother's care to anyone ever again. Mama was conscious more often now, though she had significant memory issues. Sometimes she knew who I was. Sometimes she called me by her sister's name. Sometimes she thought I was one of her students from decades ago. It didn't matter. I showed up every single day. Sometimes she'd ask, "Where's your sister? Why doesn't Francine visit anymore?" I learned to say gently, "She can't right now, Mama, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." And I meant it. 6 months after that terrible Thursday morning when I unlocked Mama's door and found her near death, life has found a new normal. Not the old normal, something different, harder earned, more honest. Mama lives at Shady Grove Memory Care now. She's gained back 20 pounds, weighs 109. The bed sores have healed, leaving scars that will never fully fade. She uses a wheelchair because her muscles atrophied too much for walking, though she does physical therapy 3 times a week, and the therapists say she's making progress. Some days she's lucid and warm, telling me stories about when I was a little girl, about my first day of school, about Daddy teaching me to ride a bike. Other days she thinks I'm her sister. Sometimes she calls me by her mother's name. Sometimes she thinks I'm one of the nurses. I've learned to meet her wherever she is. Mrs. Gaines, remember, she's the neighbor who tried to warn me, the one whose Ring camera helped build the case against Francine. Visits every Tuesday afternoon, bringing Mama's favorite butter cookies. Whitney brings the great-grandchildren on Sundays. Mama lights up when they come, even when she can't remember their names. Francine completed her sentencing hearing 4 months ago. She read her confession aloud in court. a 5-page document detailing every decision, every moment she chose money over our mother's life. She cried through the whole thing. I sat in that courtroom and felt nothing. The judge gave her the plea deal terms: 5 years probation, 500 hours of community service at an elder care facility, mandatory therapy, $36,000 in restitution at $500 a month. She works at a nursing home now as part of her service hours, cleaning bedpans, feeding residents, changing soiled sheets. I think about the poetry of that sometimes. We haven't spoken since the courtroom. We won't. The house in Biddleville was sold. I didn't want it anymore. Too many ghosts. I've learned things I wish I'd known 18 months ago. I've learned that trust without verification isn't love. It's negligence dressed up as faith. I've learned that family doesn't get a free pass on accountability just because you share blood. I've learned that professional success and caregiving aren't mutually exclusive if you build the right systems, ask the right questions, actually verify that people are okay. Most importantly, I've learned the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. I'm working on forgiving Francine, not for her sake, but for mine, so I can have peace, so I can sleep at night. But forgiveness doesn't mean she gets access to my life or Mama's life ever again. Some doors, once closed, should stay closed forever. I've learned that showing up matters more than sending money. Presence, even imperfect presence, is the truest form of love. Last Wednesday, I was sitting with Mama in the sunroom at Shady Grove. She was having a good day. She knew exactly who I was. She remembered I'd been working in Dubai. She smiled at me and said, "Did you bring me something from your travels, baby?" My throat got tight. I brought her something far more valuable than any souvenir. I brought her back from the edge of death. I brought her justice. I brought her dignity back, as much as could be salvaged from the wreckage my sister left behind. "I brought you home, Mama," I said softly. "I brought you home." She patted my hand. "That's good, baby. That's real good." It's enough. It has to be enough. I saved my mother's life, but I lost my sister. I learned the cost of blind trust and the weight of impossible choices. It's a bittersweet wisdom, but it's mine. And I'll carry it forward, protecting what matters most, the people who are still here, still breathing, still worth fighting for. Would you have pushed for prison time, or would you have accepted the plea deal? How do you forgive something like this? Tell me in the comments. Thank you so much for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next one. Drop your country flag and location in the comments. I'd love to know where you're watching from. And if you're still not subscribed, seriously, what's stopping you? Your feedback means a lot and helps me improve every story.